Well, good morning. We have some folks coming on. We've got our early birds getting on up to our webinar that's due to start at the top of the hour. Welcome, welcome. As you come on and get settled in, please make sure that you check to make sure your device is on mute. So as others join and we get a crowd going here, we don't have any background noise. Want to welcome you, and I hope you have your favorite morning beverage with you or early afternoon beverage, depending on what part of the country you're in. And my name is Ginger Beal, and on behalf of the founders, the board of directors, all of our ambassadors, and our Institute interns, I'd just like to welcome you to today's live webinar. It's a mysterious webinar, very mysterious webinar. So get settled in because we're all going to have a great time. And of course, as our morning gets and afternoon gets started, we've got 2 or 3 rolling slides today. So if you don't mind, I will talk to you a little bit about some of, and this is just a tidbit of all of the wonderful things that are going on with the movers and shakers of Opus Peace and Soul Injury. So right now, I just want to talk to you real quick while this slide is up about our annual public service event. Every February 2nd, and 2026 will be no exception, we have our annual public service event, Anchor Your Heart. This will be our 4th year to do this. Every year, our attendance grows. Every year, we stop for 3 minutes with people all around the globe to take a breath, anchor our hearts, and sit with ourselves, abide with ourselves, abide with one another, anchor our heart for the grace and peace that we need to have from within. It's a hectic world these days, and we don't take that time. So on February 2nd, mark your calendar now, 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 Central. Join us. Join us. There's a QR code, and I'm old school, so QR codes don't come easily to me. But I have learned to love QR codes. So click that QR code. The registration is open now. Oh, I love this slide. But let me tell you something. What I don't love is the fact that we don't know anything about this Ortega Moment business. That's why we're all here today. So I'm so glad you joined me because it is just my curiosity is piqued. We don't know what it is. Nobody's telling us what's going on. And November 18th has been the date circled on my calendar to find out exactly what this Ortega Moment movement is. Now, I did hear a rumor, and I think there's a couple of folks on here that can help me, and I'm calling them out today. I heard a rumor through the ambassador grapevine that this Ortega Moment business is Deborah Grassman and Marie Bainbridge's idea. And I know Marie is out there. I know she can hear me right now, and I'm calling her out. I want to know what this is. What is an Ortega Moment? How do I get involved? What are we up to today? Are you willing to spill the beans, Marie?
Yes.
You are willing to spill the beans.
Stay tuned.
Oh, no fair. I gotta wait. I gotta wait longer. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I'm gonna have to get my rock and anchor my heart. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I've got to calm myself down. I'm so excited about this day. I can't wait to hear what everybody's going to tell us about this. It's got to be good because we put a lot of thought all the way up and down the chain with Opus Peace into every single thing we do. And I have better get an experience out of this Ortega Moment because I live for those experiences, by golly. Speaking of an experience, look at this slide, guys. Welcome, welcome. I know folks are coming on and coming on. Check your mute, make sure you're on mute, and take a look at the cover of our newest soul injury book, Deborah Grassman's 3rd book in her trilogy, Her Lifelong Legacy. And here it is, soul injury wrapped up from cover to cover in this fabulous book. Many of you that are on here, I know, have already purchased a book. maybe even two or more. Maybe you've gifted it to folks. If you haven't and you're on today, think about clicking that QR code and invest in $24.95 to buy this book. Even if you're not ready to read it now, hold on to it because you're going to be ready eventually. And the time is going to be right for you to crack that cover and start reading through Soul Injury. It's packed, absolutely packed. I just read it myself. It's absolutely packed full of stories, real life stories. Self help tools, that's the name of the game. It's a self help book with lots and lots of additional information and lots of education. It is a great read, but what I love about it is it's not just a one time read. It's a resource that you can go back to over and over as you work on your own inner peace. So welcome everyone. I still see folks coming on. We start straight at the top of the hour, but in the meantime, we're going to talk about some rolling slides. We're going to talk about getting settled in. Make sure you're comfy in your chair. You got a pillow on you, behind your back. You got your beverage for morning or afternoon, and that you're on mute and ready for the top of the hour. We've got some great, great, great panelists, guests, and of course, Deborah's with us as well. Our fabulous executive director, Angie Snyder, will be leading us during this hour of information, and better be something about an Ortega moment in there too. So, and there it is, the Ortega moment, son of a gun. I sure know how to plan it, don't I? Ortega moments. Okay. How many people out here have heard of an Ortega moment? I haven't. Fill me in, fill me in. And I already know Marie's out there. I know she's out there because she played me off the first time around. I need some more scoop. Can you give us a clue, Marie? Just one teeny tiny clue as to what you and Deborah have been up to here.
You better just keep anchoring your heart, Ginger.
Oh my goodness.
Because this is really thrilling.
Okay. All right. I got a bigger rock this time. Let me see what I can do.
What she's going to throw at her.
I'm using both hands now. Okay. I'm anchoring my heart. I'm finding the peace within. I'm trying. I'm trying. Don't let me down, Marie. You guys better not let me down. I'm looking for an experience this morning and this afternoon. It's going to be so darn exciting. I kind of feel like that picture, to be honest with you. That's what I want to feel like when you tell me all about it. Whoosh, Ortega moment. Now, let me just tell you a little something else about this book. I mentioned the first time our slides went around that the book that I just read the book. Well, I did that in a book community that was sponsored by Opus Peace. This book community, I wasn't really sold on it, but I joined it anyway because I really wanted to read the book and I thought it would be really neat. You know, think of the word community, a common unity. So the commonness with 35 attendees, I joined 35 attendees, was to read the book and soak in all of the tools and the resources and the stories that were within that book. The unity was the experience that we all had virtually as a book community once a week. We met for 8 weeks and we went through the entire Soul Injury book. And most all of us pledged to go back through the book again because there's so much information in there. So if you haven't purchased it or if you haven't ever thought of attending a book community, think about it now. We've got 2 additional book communities that have already started. And I just heard that there are 3 more that are getting ready to start in January of 2026. So there's this community, this book community idea is really spreading, and it's really great to get together with folks and go through that Soul Injury book. I really enjoyed it, and I was no longer skeptical after the first week. So I see folks kind of getting ready. I see Deborah's camera is on. We must be getting close to the top of the hour here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deborah, Angie, whoever's going to open us up today.
Well, thank you as always, Ginger, for
talking us through the opening slides as we're getting ready for today. So first, I want to welcome everyone and thank you for being here today. This is a very busy month. So for some of you, you're still working through your veteran programs, still some veteran ceremonies going on out there. Some of you are celebrating Hospice and Palliative Care Month, which always happens in the month of November. And many of us are preparing for what will happen in a week, which is Thanksgiving and all its festivities. So I really appreciate you making time today for this webinar. So you may think that you're arriving for a webinar, but you've actually stepped into the beginning of a movement, a quiet revelation of grace, courage, and human connection. And for weeks, as Ginger mentioned, we've been hinting at something new, something we intentionally have kept protected until the right moment. And really not for secrecy's sake, but because some truths deserve to be unveiled with reverence. So today is that moment. This gathering marks the official launch of the Ortega campaign, and at its heart, it is a simple yet profoundly transformative idea, the Ortega moment. So today we get to reveal it, its meaning, its origin, the extraordinary impact it can have when embodied with intention. So you'll discover how an Ortega moment is born out of grace that fuels us to step into our hurting world with honesty, courage, and humility on the surface. But it creates a ripple of healing that reaches far beyond the moment itself. So throughout today's webinar, you'll hear real stories, honest, vulnerable, and soul-touching stories of times when one act of unexpected compassion changed everything. These stories will remind us why Opus Peace exists, to tend to the invisible wounds that people carry, to restore connection where isolation has taken root, and to spark healing in places that have been silent for far too long. So by the end of our time together, you won't just understand what an Ortega moment is. Hopefully, you will feel it. You will see its potential in your own life, and you'll be equipped to create these moments in ways that impact both the giver and the receiver. So I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath and allow your heart to open and let curiosity and hope rise within you. Because today we are not simply teaching a concept. We are igniting a movement of grace, a movement of healing, and a movement of people's willingness to show up when it matters most. So Ginger, the moment you've been waiting for, welcome to the unveiling of the Ortega moment. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Deborah to get us started.
Yes, well, I am going to assume that you're here today because you are curious about what in the world an Ortega moment might be that Ginger's been talking about. You may be afraid that you're missing out on something. And you know what? You are. I guess you could say that Ortega Moments found us. And you're going to hear that story. And it's a rather unusual story that occurred when Angie and I simultaneously had an experience that led us to the same aha moment. And that has changed how Opus Peace delivers the soul injury message. So I'm going to tell you what happened to me first. As some of you may know, a year ago, Hurricane Helene destroyed our beaches with massive flooding. And if that wasn't bad enough, 10 days later, Hurricane Milton finished us off with 100-mile-an-hour winds and 15 inches of rain. And I know many of my family members lost their homes and their cars. Now, this is a picture of the grounds of our Opus Peace office here in St. Petersburg. Massive oak trees were uprooted, and they were everywhere. They simply fell over from the 15 inches of rain that had undermined their root systems. It was heartbreaking. Many of them took down power lines, as did this one beside my house. Every block had these monstrous giants toppled like dominoes. Now, we had a fence with Opus Peace sayings on it, and I loved it. Gone. But what happened inside our storage area was worse. Our storage garage was flooded with seawater, and almost our entire inventory of books was damaged. Now, books are our major source of revenue. Lost, gone overnight. Well, what do? Well, first, you cry. And then you roll up your sleeves and you drag 3,000 books out onto your driveway at about 100 books at a time and dry them in the sun, turning them over at midday so that both sides receive the light. Right, Mary Ellen? I see you on the web. She helped me. And now this doesn't look like it's backbreaking, but if you do it for 8 hours a day for 10 days, you'll be exhausted. Now here's the joy. Opus Peace is always searching for ways to get the soul injury message into the hands of hurting people so they can heal the relationship they have with themselves. So we offered to give the damaged books away or to sell the slightly damaged books at a markedly reduced price. The only stipulation was that the books had to be given away to people who can assure us that the book is given to someone who will read it and not just sit it on a shelf unread. Well, what was the result? Lots of people took us up on the offer. This is the back of my car going to the post office on the first day after we announced it. So what does all that mean? It means our organization lost a lot of money. It also means that the message is now getting into the hands of unsuspecting people, people who would not have otherwise discovered tools to do the work to heal the relationship that they have with themselves. And I've got to tell you, I walked out of the post office that day overjoyed. All of a sudden, it hit me. All the money we had lost was being redeemed by helping unsuspecting people who would now receive the soul injury message. Now, it also just happened that my post office experience coincided with an experience that Andy had.
So I'm a QA consultant for hospices, and one of them wanted to interview me for a project that they were doing. So a man that I had not seen before came over to the counter where I was standing, and he introduced himself as Ortega. And he said he would be asking me a few questions. So I told him to go ahead and start while I finished what I was doing. So I was expecting the usual questions about the work that I do, but his question was anything but usual. In fact, his question startled me. He said, "What makes you get out of bed in the morning?" Well, I was at a loss for words. I was prepared to give a canned answer about a passion I have for end-of-life care. But instead, I paused and I got real with myself. And then I told this stranger that if I was going to answer him honestly, that he would need to sit down and put down his computer. So he did so easily enough, and we found 2 chairs, and he gave me his undivided attention. Well, I proceeded to tell him about Opus Peace and the definition of soul injury. And as soon as I said the word soul injury, he paused. And with the saddest eyes, he said, "Soul injury, those words are hitting me. I don't know what soul injury means, and yet I know what it means. Tell me more." So I went on to tell him about the 3 causes of soul injury and about the work I do as the executive director of Opus Peace. Now, I always carry a signed copy of the soul injury book with me. And today I intended to give this book to a colleague. But this man's response to what I was saying changed all of my previous intentions. So I reached in my bag and pulled out the book. And when I handed it to him, you would have thought that I had given him liquid gold. He clutched that book tightly against his chest, and tears rolled down his cheeks. And then he asked me questions about the photo that's on the cover. So I told him that the artist had entitled this artwork Freedom. And I could see that this too struck him as he sat studying the implications of the artwork's message. He told me that he planned to start reading the book right away, and I asked him to contact me when he was done. And when we parted, I was on cloud 9. I didn't know his story, but I knew the impact that this book could have. I was filled with awe at the unexpected encounter. Yet I also had a haunting knowing that everything was exactly how it was supposed to be. Well, 6 weeks later, his unknown story became known to me after he read the book and texted me this message. He said, "Reading Soul Injury awakened something in me I didn't even know I had buried. When I was 6 years old, my world collapsed. My mother was in prison for murdering someone. My father disappeared into cocaine, and I was left to raise myself and my younger brother. Most of my life since then has been spent surviving on the streets, cut off from the child inside me who had been abandoned and wounded. This book helped me to turn inward to face that disconnected part of myself with honesty, courage, and compassion. And for the first time, I feel like I have permission to tend to my own pain, not just survive it. Soul Injury gave me words, tools, and hope to cradle my wounded self with compassion and slowly find my way back to the life I was always meant to live. I do matter, and that is a new concept for me." Well, his message brought tears to my eyes.
And when Angie told me, I cried with what had transpired between her and this stranger named Ortega. Little did I realize at that time how her encounter with Ortega and my encounter with Damaged Hurricane books would help Opus Peace with our goal of helping heal our hurting world. Ortega and a hurricane were helping us learn lessons about suffering and lessons about grace that would change how Opus Peace gets the Soul Injury books into the hands of people who would benefit from its message. You know, letting grace fuel an organization, letting grace be your teacher requires a shift in perspective. It reminds me of what Rachel Naomi Reman says. She says that helping, fixing, and serving represent 3 different ways of seeing life. She says this. She says, it's a matter of perspective. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. But when you serve, you see life as whole. She says that fixing and helping may be the work of the ego. And she says service is the work of the soul. So this got me to thinking, were our programs at Opus Peace helping, fixing, or serving? Did we see people as weak, broken, or whole? You know, we have an annual pledge about not letting fear fuel our ego. In fact, this is our pledge to the public. Our pledge is this. Our pledge is that we will let neither fear nor personal or organizational ego interfere with Opus Peace policymaking. Rather, when fear lures us into ego, we'll acknowledge it and realign ourselves with our source so grace can fuel us and fuel our organization. So I had to ask myself, are we truly living up to that pledge? How are we being hypocrites when we don't? You know, if we're truly serving and if we are truly aligning ourselves with grace, then how would that affect how we conduct business? So I started looking for opportunities to examine our business practices with the lens of serving and the lens of how the soul injury message had gotten into Ortega and other unsuspecting people's hands. Well, my first encounter was with John, my massage therapist. This is a picture of my amazing massage therapist. And for 2 years, John had worked hard each month to straighten out my back and shoulder muscles that were hunched over a computer to peck out each word of the soul injury manuscript. And when the book was finally published, he said he thought some of his clients would want to read it. So I gave him a few books, but first I told him Ortega's story. Well, he was deeply touched by it. Then I coached him on the Ortega sales approach. This is what I said. I said, John, just put the book out here on your desk where clients will see it, but don't urge them to buy it. Let them inquire about it. If they ask, you can share personal insights from your own reading, but don't tell them that they need to read it. Let something within them beckon them to buy it. Well, John agreed, stating that he understood how grace works. Well, 2 weeks later, John texted me to tell me that he had had an Ortega moment. He said a client had been intrigued by the title and had bought the book. He said a week later, she texted him that she could not put the book down. She said, and here's a quote, she texted him this: I'm loving the soul injury book. It's the best book on healing the self that I've come across. Is there a book community that I can join to read it with others? Well, John told me how satisfied he felt to have made that connection. In fact, he called it being a conduit to inner peace. Now, Mimi Lawson is also a client of John's. And she also learned about Ortega's story. And Mimi and I met when she was a radio announcer with Cox Media. In fact, this is a picture of her at that surprise. I got it off the internet. But she is obviously here with us today, and I'm going to let her tell you about how she has come to participate in the Ortega movement.
Well, it's funny that you found that picture. That's funny. Well, as Deborah mentioned, I also go to John, and we had talked about this. But what I was doing at the time when I met Deborah was that I was the head of public service for Cox Media. And really all I knew about Deborah was that she was a local woman who had written a book, that she was caring for dying veterans, and that they had a nonprofit, which is what we were interested in, called Opus Peace. So when I got her on the air and we were doing a virtual, although we were not, we didn't have pictures, which was good. She said that I asked her what the mission of Opus Peace was, and she said it was to provide educational programs to help heal soul injuries. Well, I got to tell you, I don't know what she said after that. I just somehow knew deep in my gut that were those words soul injuries, resonated with me. It resonated a truth of my being. It was a good thing that Deborah is as good at talking as she is, because I literally put my head down and let the tears roll down my face. She talked on about soul injury, and luckily I didn't need to respond. Like I said, we didn't have pictures. But over the next several years, I really got involved with Opus Peace, and I read her books. I attended workshops to address my own soul injuries, because the minute you hear those two words, and if you have a soul injury, it speaks to you. And then so when her book came out, I was really excited that I got to share this book on soul injury when it came out this spring. So I bought a bunch of books and I gave them to friends and people that I would come across and tell them they absolutely needed to read this book. It would change their life. And then I heard about the Ortega campaign, and I realized that what I was doing was really pushing people to read this book. And so I told Deborah that this Ortega approach is telling me that instead of shouting from the rooftops about this book, that I needed to attract people to the book. I needed to trade in this megaphone for a magnet towards this book. So I bought some more books and I started watching for opportunities. So recently, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a meeting and met a couple of women there. It was all about Reiki. And I had actually learned about Reiki because of Opus Peace. So I went to hear about everything about it. And there were a couple of hospice nurses there, RNs, who were also Reiki practitioners. And I started talking to them. I thought, well, they've been in hospice. This is really going to be something that would interest them. I had a book that I was going to give somebody else there, and I just put it down in front of me. And so when the break came, I talked to her and another woman and gave the book to the first woman. And the second woman said to me, oh my gosh, this is something I have to read. It just speaks to me as well. So I went to the car, got another book. Plus, I also got Deborah's first book, Peace at Last, because the one woman dealt with a lot of veterans. But as I gave these women these books, both of them looked at me and said, do you feel that? I have goosebumps. And you palpably could feel this energy between three people and that we really connected. They said, I can't wait to read this book. I got a call from one of them 3 days later saying, there are 2 more women that I work with that I've run into that need to read this book. Do you have more copies? Well, I just bought 10 more. So yes, I do. and to tell you, it's not just what I'm doing for other people that really speaks to me about this, because it's a way for me to donate money to these women who I really believe in their message and have for over 10 years. But also I'm able to take that real book that I purchased and hand it to somebody who's literally begging to read it. And so the goosebumps continue to go up my spine all the time. And again, like John said, it's wonderful to be a conduit to this inner peace and not just a megaphone telling people they have to read a book. Thank you, Dee.
So what lessons have we initially learned? We want unsuspecting people to receive the soul injury message. Unexpected encounters lead to a sacred gift when you can take a risk to listen, watch, and be vulnerable with someone. Trade in the megaphone for a magnet. Let something within them urge them to read it. Be a conduit to inner peace. Recognize Ortega moments when you can give someone a book that helps them heal the relationship they have with themselves. So let me share how some other Ortega moments that people have told us about. This is Opus Peace founder, Sheila Lozier. Sheila belongs to an international crochet club called Random Acts of Kindness, Crochet Kindness. And this is one of Sheila's many, many crocheted characters that are a part of what Sheila calls Toad Nation. Now, Sheila has now incorporated Ortega Moments into the Crochet Kindness group. And here's what she emailed to us. She said, I have a crochet friend in Scotland who's been going through some serious medical issues himself. And then his life partner was rushed to the hospital and put into a medically induced coma. So I sent him the soul injury book and I told him to explore chapter 5 on the Anchor Your Heart tool. I suggested that when he can't be at the hospital, he can anchor his heart and think about his boyfriend. He did. He said it really helped. He even posted about what happened in a thread that's used by our worldwide Random Acts of Kindness group. So one of our members in Wisconsin asked about his reference to the soul injury book. I gifted this new Wisconsin friend a copy after she promised to read it and not just let it sit on a shelf. I'm looking forward to hearing from her. I'm calling this a double Ortega moment for both my Scotland and Wisconsin friends. Now I want to introduce Linda Trageser. She's going to tell us about her Ortega experience.
Well, I have followed Opus Peace since it started 12 years ago. I've watched the soul injury concept grow into a movement that helps people heal the relationship they have with themselves. When the soul injury book came out, I was excited and immediately ordered 20 books. I had lots of friends and acquaintances that I wanted to read it. Later, I learned about the Ortega Project. I immediately recognized an approach that didn't push or promise, but rather beckoned and waited. The Ortega approach reminded me of 12-step principles. Mainly, people have to be open and ready to receive, plus the giver.
Linda, you're on mute.
Linda, you suddenly went on mute.
Okay.
There you go.
Off
You're
mute.
good. You're good.
So let me just rephrase that the Ortega approach reminded me of a 12-step principles, mainly that people have to be open and ready to receive. Plus, the giver has to be poised to serve when that opening arises. 12-step programs have also taught me about the power of community. Common unity is what brings concepts like soul injury alive. I applied these principles to the people I had given the book to. I recognized that two of the people really wanted to start their own soul injury community. We can do this together and really learn this stuff. I'll be the leader, one of them told me. I had planned to join the Opus Peace book community, but I took the lead from my friends and withdrew from the Opus Peace community and let my friends lead me in our own book group. It turned out to be an Ortega experience. The three of us have been meeting weekly for the past few months, doing one chapter at a time. We have done some amazing personal work, and my two friends went above and beyond, coming up with some creative ways to apply the exercises. For example, they copied the iceberg in chapter 9 and the feelings in the appendix H. And we each identified how we perceived and how the world perceived what was above and below the waterline. Although our relationships have always been close, I can honestly say now those relationships are emotionally intimate. And that makes me feel really connected, not only to them, but also to myself.
Well, thank you, Linda. I so appreciate you. I appreciate she brought 20 books right out of the gate. As soon as it came out, she said, I want all my friends to have this. So, well, our stated vision at Opus Peace is a world where people know how to personally apply these three statements. Cultivate in me the willingness to reown, rehome, and revitalize scattered pieces of myself so wholeness can be restored. Grow in me the honesty, courage, and humility to release my fear of who I am and who I am not. Fuel me with your grace. What does it mean to be fueled by grace? Do we really mean that? Or is it just words? How do you create space for grace? You know, it requires intention. It requires trust. And for me, that's a challenge. I like to control. I like to plan. But grace doesn't exactly work that way. For me, my 30 years of working with dying veterans in hospice taught me more about grace than anything else. Because daily, I saw veterans let go of stoic facades, face the end of their lives with grace and humility, and allow themselves to become completely human. And that took courage. And it was as heroic as facing any enemy in battle. Just to give you a tiny glimpse of what I learned about grace at the bedside of dying veterans, let me read you a few short sentences from the Soul Injury book. The veil between consciousness and unconsciousness becomes thin as death draws near. The rational mind and the intuitive mind meet. The sacred and the profane intersect. The ego now welcomes the soul. Grit and grace become new friends. Pain and peace coexist without fear. I now recognize that grace is the result of the collision between our rational and intuitive minds when they're able to exit that collision in one accord. Just like the partnership between the rational mind and the intuitive mind, the cooperative partnership between the grit of my ego and the grace of my soul are equally important. Grace may be freely available, but it's wasted without the grit of intention and willpower. The grit of willpower and intention creates the space for grace. So that if grace is not only available, but then it can be set into motion. End of quote. So let's look at a few more examples of using grace to create Ortega moments. I'm going to introduce you via video to Katie Hennessy. She wanted to be a part of the webinar today. She's otherwise engaged, so she made this video. So listen to her Ortega experience.
I feel sheepish about the story I'm getting ready to tell you. I even feel a bit like an imposter because I haven't yet finished the soul injury book myself. But I'm very familiar with the soul injury concepts because I went to the Institute training. I've read Deborah's other 2 books, and I attend the monthly webinars when I can. As a semi-retired licensed clinical social worker who volunteers weekly in a program for men who are experiencing houselessness, homelessness, and in recovery, I often refer to the concepts I learned from Opus Peace, and I was excited when the soul injury book came out so that I could continue my learning, but also I knew this would be a book that I would want to give to others, the newest and most evolved translation of what I tried to use in a helping practice and what I endeavored to explain to others. But I did miss the boat a few months ago, a boat that I don't plan on missing again, and here's the story. I was in a grocery store in our little town in Oregon. A gentleman and I were vying for the next place in line, and his baseball cap had a military insignia indicating a range of years served during the 1960s. The gentleman and I made eye contact. Opus Peace taught me how to welcome home Vietnam vets, and I'm always amazed at how it prompts such authentic conversation, even and especially with strangers. I pointed to his hat and I said, "Thank you for your service. You should go ahead of me in line." I also told him that both of my parents were World War II veterans. He then told me what I had suspected. He'd been in Vietnam. Thankfully, the store was busy and the line was long, which gave us more time to talk. He told me then how difficult it was to come home. He said, not only did no one welcome us, nobody wanted to hire us. I had a terrible time finding a job for a very long time. People said bad things to us, called us bad names. He continued, but it was true. I hurt people. I killed fathers and brothers and sons. I let myself absorb the impact that our civilian actions had on him. I let myself absorb the fact that I had just been honored with a real conversation and a sensitive disclosure. By this point, the checkout clerk was listening. She heard me ask the gentleman with whom I was talking if he had ever heard of Opus Peace. The veteran had. I encouraged him to stay in touch with Opus Peace, and I told him about the new book that had just come out. After he went on his way, I remarked to the checkout clerk, this organization is in Florida. How remarkable is it that both of us were in the same line, in the same store, at the same time, in our little Oregon town a long way from Florida, and that we both know and have benefited from the work of Opus Peace. It is amazing to make such a real connection in just a few minutes, even in a grocery store. That day, I walked away knowing that our conversation was meaningful and it made a difference, at least it really did to me. But I also regretted not having either a soul injury book or a Peace at Last book to give to that veteran. So when Opus Peace came out announcing that there was this Ortega campaign, and I heard the story of how it had come about, I was grateful because I know what they mean when they talk about the fulfillment that the giver gets from recognizing an opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. So I let Opus Peace know that I wanted to be part of the campaign so that I could participate in more Ortega Moments. And I made a commitment to myself to buy and give away at least one book a month, and to have one or two at the ready with me so that when the next Ortega moment arises, I'm ready and able to make a difference. I walked away from those moments that day in the grocery store, knowing that those moments mattered,
Sorry, I thought the chair
knowing
don't have
that
it
I
taken
matter, knowing
because
that it all matters. And that's a good feeling to have.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Katie. Well, Mary Getchell has a similar story, and she is here with me, and she's going to tell you about her Ortega moment.
Yeah, I worked as a clinical dietitian at the VA for over 33 years. To be honest, in my earlier years, I did not take the time to listen to the veteran stories because what did that have to do with my job of being a dietitian? It was not until I worked with Deborah and the hospice team that I learned how to listen to veteran stories, and I was taught how to welcome home our Vietnam vets by presenting them with welcome home beads. After retiring from the VA, I became conscious of veterans who wore their hats proudly or had military displays on their license plates. When I learned about the Opus Peace discounting damaged Peace at Last books from the hurricane to people who find unsuspecting people to give them to, I jumped at the chance and bought several. One day I was chatting with a crossing guard while waiting across the street with my little dog. The guard indicated that her husband was a Vietnam vet. I asked if I could meet him, and she said he was sitting in the car close by waiting for her. After a sincere conversation about his service, I welcomed him home with a big hug after giving him the welcome home beads. We both cried. Then I gave him the Peace at Last book. He said he'd read it, and I believe him. Then I turned to his wife and pinned her with the American angel pin that Opus Peace uses to honor families of veterans. I could see how much it meant to her that I recognized how her husband's military service had impacted her. It's been 5 weeks since that happened, but that Ortega moment is still with me to this day. It's a moment I cherish, and I hope many will come in the future.
Thank you, Mary. Love what you're doing to bring our veterans respect and honor. Well, creating space for grace has been important to me in leading my team at the VA or here at Opus Peace. I've always liked a quote by Antoine Saint-Exupéry. He says, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work. Rather, teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea." It has always seemed to me that as a supervisor or as a leader in an organization, you have to develop a different management or business practice to shift from having people collect wood and do tasks. And it seems to me that the grace of the soul is that spark inside each one of us that houses that endless immensity of the sea. And it's that soul spark that provides the grace that is always beckoning us toward wholeness. To dwell from our soul rather than our ego requires that our self-talk be something like this. uncover something essential within me, something that really matters, something beyond the facade, something more than fleeting happiness. Fill the yearning in my heart with an experience of who I really am. Giving each other an experience of themselves is what the Ortega movement is all about. And it can just be simple things. So I'm going to ask a few more people to tell you simple ways that you can do that if you're so inclined. And then we'll take questions. So first of all is the president of Opus Peace and a Vietnam veteran as well, I'll just add, Marie Bainbridge.
I leave a soul injury book out on my dining room table just to remind me to look for those Ortega moments. Last week, a neighbor came over and she spied the book on the table. Now, mind you, she picked it up with more than social politeness. I could see she was curious, intrigued. I didn't say much as she examined the cover and flipped through the contents. After a few moments, I said, "It's yours. I'd love to give it to you." She looked at me with complete gratitude. I could see she felt overwhelmed by my offer. I don't know how this story might end because it just happened, but I'm looking forward to the waiting. I know I can't control her response to the words on those pages, but I also know that if it impacts her the way I think it will, our conversations are going to be much more meaningful than they have ever been. And I will add this postscript. This is the last person I would have ever thought that I would give this book to. So you never know.
Unexpected moments. It's so true. That's part of the element of an Ortega moment.
Well, thank you, Marie. Next is Pat McGuire, the co-founder of Opus Peace.
As one of the founders, I've been a part of Opus Peace's story since its inception. When the book came out, I was excited. It had been a long time coming, and now it was finally here. The problem was that I wasn't. I had lost my home and car in the hurricane, and so moved to California to be near my sons. I wanted to get the book out to others, but I felt alone trying to do it. Immediately, I ordered 3 books. I sent 2 of them to friends and asked them to read it, and they did. They even joined the soul injury book community, and that was really great. But it was the Ortega moment that I experienced with one of my new friends here in California that has stayed with me. I told her about soul injury, but I was really inept at trying to explain it. So I showed her our website and asked her to have a look at that. She did. She read about soul injury and listened to Deborah's TED Talk, and she kept commenting on the wisdom she was reading and seeing. Then she spotted a soul injury book sitting near my computer. She reached out for it, and I said, "It's all in there for you. It's yours." And she took it with my blessing. It was a grace-filled moment that I won't soon forget. It was a different approach than I had used with my 2 friends, but it was an approach that felt sacred.
Thank you, Pat. Now we have Ginger Veal.
Well, I waited a long time to hear about this Ortega moment. I think I've actually had one. One of my relatives had lost her son to suicide 2 years ago. And she's been actually just swimming in grief ever since. The 2nd anniversary of her son's death was just a couple of months ago. She described the difficulty of the day on Facebook, and she posted a photograph of her and my husband when he attended the funeral. I felt that raw depth of her grief that she wrote and showed in that photograph. That was the moment I knew it was time to gift her with the soul injury book. The thought it had crossed my mind time and time again, but I knew those times they weren't the right times. You can't read a book when that kind of pain is so raw and so overwhelming. She just needed me to sit and abide with my presence with her. But now it felt different. I felt the need to send to her that book so that she could experience the stories of others and she could see those self-help tools and resources. And hopefully she could use them to continue her healing process or really even begin it. When I mailed that book, actually my heart filled with hope. My intention was to invite without pressure and then to wait with patience without forcing the outcome or the moment. I let grace do its work.
Thank you, Ginger.
My pleasure.
So I'm going to give you one last personal example with another stranger whose name was not Ortega. So it happened on an airplane, and I don't usually talk to people on planes. I tend to keep to myself. I put my headphones in, open up my computer, hoping for quiet. But on this flight, the man next to me kept asking questions about the veteran slides that he saw on my screen. And then he said softly, "I'm a veteran, but I don't usually tell people. No one cares about Vietnam veterans." Well, that stopped me. I closed my laptop and I turned toward him and I told him how painful it must have been to come home from war only to be ridiculed by the very people he fought to protect. Well, his shoulders dropped and slowly he began to tell me stories of what he had seen, what he had done, and the unbearable guilt and shame that he had carried for years. Well, I listened closely because at times he was whispering so that no one around us would hear what he was saying. I bore witness to the pain, shame, and guilt he expressed with the stories that he was sharing with me. I validated his feelings and I encouraged him to open up to the pain he was feeling behind his stoic wall. Before we landed, I handed him a copy of Peace at Last. I told him it was filled with stories about veterans' search for peace within themselves. He promised that he would read it, and as we talked, we discovered that we lived actually less than 6 miles apart. Well, I was sure I would never see him again, but two months later, he reached out to me and we met at a local coffee shop. He told me that he had read the book cover to cover. He said he saw himself in nearly every story, that it helped him understand his suffering in a new way. He had started going back to church and he was finding the courage to ask God for forgiveness. We talked about what it might mean to release himself from the prison of guilt and shame that had bound him for so long. And as I listened to his transformation, I realized that the book I had given had also given something to me. It reminded me why this work matters. That healing isn't something we give to others, but something we enter with them. That day on the airplane, peace was shared between us. The gift wasn't just the book. It was the sacred exchange of two wounded hearts helping each other remember that restoring wholeness is possible and peace is never out of reach.
Thank you, Angie. So at this time, we welcome questions. If you want to take yourself off of mute or put them in the chat. As you see, I hope that you get I hope we've been adequate in communicating that this is not, that the Ortega moments is not just a ploy on Opus Peace to sell more books. That's not what this is about. And I hope we were adequately able to convey that this is about grace and trusting grace and allowing really perfectly. Go back one slide. I just love how Angie said the sacred exchange of two wounded hearts helping each other remember that restoring wholeness is possible. That's the moment. That's the moment. So questions, comments, concerns about anything that we have said?
Ginger, we just want to know if you're satisfied.
More than satisfied. Absolutely. My anxiety is gone.
Is your curiosity is satisfied? All right. Okay. All right. You all are so quiet. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means that you all are fully satisfied, or if you're just still like, yeah, what in the world are they talking about?
I missed the beginning. What did you all say was Ortega Moments?
Well, I had an experience during the hurricanes with all of our damaged books of giving the books away. And my aha moment, my Ortega moment, of course, that's not what we called it back then, was that these books would be going to unsuspecting people, because we were giving them to people who would then have to give them out to other people who didn't even know they existed. So, not normally our books are sold, people know, oh, I want to read this book, and they contact us and we mail them the book. But the people that would be getting these books would not even know that the book existed. So that just gave me thrills when, it redeemed the suffering that we had experienced in losing all of our inventory. And then Angie had a different experience, but the same type of grace-filled moment when a stranger that she talked to, when she used the term soul injury, he just became overwhelmed with his own soul injury. He realized it, named it, and they had a conversation, he had a very remarkable story that she gave him a book. She had a book on her to give him or to give someone else, and she ended up giving it to him because of what he had said. So these Ortega moments, and you're welcome to watch the recording, Belen, to pick up the first part of the thing, our message. But the idea is to kind of be ready and waiting for a moment, knowing these opportunities to be able to gift someone with a book, whether it be, it doesn't have to be the soul injury book. For a veteran, it might be the Peace at Last book or the Hero Within book, which is for anyone. But anyway, just to be ready so that you can have that experience. As my massage therapist said, he said, oh my gosh, I got to be a conduit of peace by giving this book to a client. So at any rate, watch the beginning of the recording. That was, it's kind of hard to describe what an Ortega moment is.
So Ginger,
Well, I think I got it. Opportunistic moments that if we're not paying attention, we could definitely miss it.
There you go.
I got you.
Okay. Yeah, Linda talked earlier on the call about it's very similar to 12-step programs where you kind of have to be ready and waiting, and not push something on someone and say, oh, you need to read this because you're broken or you need fixing or whatever. It's more about serving and being in the moment and recognizing that grace is right there. At Opus Peace, we talk about how we are already whole. Everything you need, everything we need is inside us. We are already whole. We are both wounded and whole. And so it's being able to allow pain and peace to coexist together without fear, because it's fear that separates us from that sense of wholeness. So anyway, as I said, I think of this sacred exchange of two wounded hearts helping each other. That's what the Ortega moment is. Were you wanting to say something?
Well, I saw there was a comment in the chat. Someone asked how they can get the book. The books are available on our website. I will send out a follow-up email in the next day or two. There will be links on there where you can access the Ortega landing page on our website, as well as links to where you can purchase the books. Ginger, was there anything else in the chat?
That I was going to mention that the only other thing I saw was someone was inquiring about CEUs for today's webinar.
There are not CEUs for today's webinar. All right, so with that, I just want to finish up and just say that if today stirred something in you, consider carrying a small gift of grace with you, something that you can place into the hands of an unsuspecting soul when the Ortega moment arrives. Now, for many of us, that gift is the book. It's not about the book itself. It's about being ready to respond with compassion when grace taps you on the shoulder. Share your stories with us. There will be a button on the Opus Peace website on the Ortega landing page. Submit your story, either written or you can submit a video. Stories are important because Ortega moments are often quiet, unplanned, and easily dismissed. By telling the story, you give language to something sacred, those small acts of compassion that change the trajectory of someone else's day or life. Most people experience grace, but don't recognize it. Your story helps them say, oh yeah, I felt that too. And it helps people connect the dots that they've never connected before. Stories of grace counter the narrative of isolation and hurt. And every Ortega story binds a thread between two hearts, the giver and the receiver. So when you speak your story, you empower someone else to become someone's unexpected moment of grace. So I'll just ask one more time if there's any final questions, comments.
Angie, there was
Yes.
one that was just asked while you were speaking, and that is the soul injury book on Audible?
It is not currently available on Audible. We are in the midst of editing the audio book, and it will be coming out. It's probably going to be coming out the first of the year. We're finishing up the editing now. We're in the final stage of editing.
And it will come with a workbook as well, since it'll make it easy to do audio book communities as well as the readable one.
Anything else in the chat, Ginger? No?
No, just we probably want to add that the other two books are available in Audible form off the website. We're just
Correct.
waiting on the third one.
Yes, you can get the audiobook of Peace at Last or The Hero Within on the Opus Peace website.
And there is a bundle pricing if you get all three. You can help us recover from the hurricane. I mean, as much as this is about grace, and it's also that we want to continue operating, but that's our secondary, not the primary goal.
When will we know when the audio is available? Is there a way that you can notify us?
Yes, we will be sending the information out. It'll go to everybody who's on our mailing list once it's available with the link for how it can be purchased. And we obviously will also mention it on a webinar when it's available as well.
Thank you.
And the audio, Donald, the audio book is in my voice too. I did the audio.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I break down and cry a few times when I read some of those, when I tell some of those stories.
Understandably.
So as we're closing out, I'll just say we started the beginning. I talked about the photo on the front of the book. If anyone's interested in that photo, the actual sculpture is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's on the side of a building. The artist actually lives just 25 minutes outside the city. And Deborah and I will be paying him a visit actually this Saturday. So look on our social media. We'll post some pictures of Zenas Fradakis and the two of us at the Freedom Sculpture in Philadelphia on Saturday. So thank you so much for being with us today. I hope that you will all take some time to absorb what you've heard and start being on the lookout for an Ortega moment, and make sure you have that small gift of grace ready to offer in an unexpected moment. I will send a follow-up email. Please give me a few days as we will be traveling tomorrow, so it will likely not come out immediately, but as soon as the recording is available and I have everything set, I will send it out to everyone who registered today. Thank you and have a good afternoon. We will see you in December. Our December webinar will also be a little bit early. It will be the third Tuesday of December instead of the last Tuesday, so that we do not interrupt any holiday traveling and festivities that are going on for everyone. So for those of you that celebrate Thanksgiving, please enjoy time with your family and friends, and we will see you in December.
Thank you very much. Blessings to you all.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.